Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Daily Arsenal Podcast, brought to you as part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. It's Tuesday, which means normally sort of like a bit of a tactical Tuesday, and we're certainly going to be looking at a bit of a tactical issue that Arsenal have. This episode is called How to Solve a Problem Like Marti-Skelly. And we are going to be looking at the issues caused by the injury to our very own Gabriel Martinelli. And then in the second half of today's episode, we're going to be looking at a little bit of a deeper dive into the problems, the reaction to the Lewis Skelly celebration when he scored against Manchester City. But to start off, I am your host, Josh Vince, and joining me today are Jamie Patterson, Rodney Gooden, and Matt. Gents, it's great to see you all. Rodney and Matt, it's been a while since we've had you on. Rodney, how have you been keeping, buddy?
I've been well as can be, actually. You know, I said it's been nice, as I mentioned earlier, just having a little break as well. Our team not being in the air, means I've had less games to watch, more time to enjoy the destruction of other teams, and not watch my own. So, yeah, it's been all right.
It does feel quite relaxing, doesn't it? And Matt, are you enjoying the sort of the breath that you're allowed to take while the boys are in Dubai?
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? I'd like to join them though, but no, it's something having a weekend without Arsenal. I'll tell you that.
It does feel sort of like my blood pressure dipped an awful lot, so not in a dangerous amount, but just dipped
back to normal levels,
a healthy level. Exactly. And I mean, Jamie, you were talking about trying to get us out to Dubai to cover the lads in the hot water.
Said this, and thank goodness, I got heard. So let's hope now that we can try and pick up some form, and the boys are ready and raring to go for Leicester away at 12:30 on a Saturday.
And you know what the great news is? Ben White has gone. He's topping up his tab.
Yeah,
that means that we are in business.
Yeah,
Ben White is getting sorted, guys. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today was Gabriel Martinelli. Now, I've been waxing lyrical about this kid all season, but he's picked up a big injury, which is likely to see him out for about a month and a half. Not the best of news. So what we want to talk about is the options for sort of the cover in that position, because we got Saka out on the right, where Martinelli was playing quite a bit already. Like, Rodney, hearing that Martinelli is going to be out for the next month or so, does it fill you with concern, seeing as he was like our next sort of big creator after Ødegaard when Saka was injured?
Of course. I think, honestly, you can ask questions of Martinelli this season. Form's been up and down, but what I see is we've got a dedicated winger and another gap in the squad that can't easily be filled as well. Say what you want about performances this season, Martinelli is a very comfortable choice on that wing, and we do not have the depth to cover a Martinelli-shaped hole when we're already out with Saka. So it's looking very light in a key area, and it's making me quite nervous.
Yeah, definitely. Especially Matt, because we haven't spoken to you really, Matt, about this. When you look at the business that Arsenal did in the January transfer window, which for those who have forgotten was nothing. Like, how can you sort of reconcile with us being left this short in this position, or even in the forward positions in general?
No, I was thrilled that we signed no one, because why sign attackers when you need attackers? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think seeing that Martinelli injury, we almost tempted fate and got punished for it. A few days after the transfer window, it was almost like a call to say, all right, Arsenal, if you're going to run your players into the ground and bank off the fact that they're going to stay fit for the rest of the season, and it's the same names every single week, and with the greatest of respect, it's not like a Mane, Salah, Firmino type where you've got like the best attackers and it's like you're really scared to add. You're talking about an attack which is good, has shown some great promise at times, some really good moments, some really good games, some really good form, but an attack which I think everyone can safe to say can be improved on quite easily. And that Martinelli injury was almost like this serves you right Arsenal type of thing. And I was just like, well, what's there to say, really? It was just so typical. The timing was so typical, almost to be expected. As I say, we almost tempted fate. And as you say, and obviously that's what we'll be discussing, we've now got quite a bigger issue to solve.
We do, yeah, massively. It literally came 2 days after Arteta said, I was disappointed we didn't sign anybody. And 2 days later, Snap. Now,
Yeah.
Jamie, there are 3 players who sort of shout out as possibles to fill this slot on the left-hand side, because realistically it's the slot on the left-hand side, but we also kind of have to think about the right because he's playing by... It's very complicated. But when we talk about the left, the 3 sort of options that are being talked about are Leandro Trossard, Raheem Sterling, and Kieran Tierney has been an interesting one. So to start off, Trossard. Now, I know I don't like him, and I've made myself perfectly clear on that.
Yeah.
I'm not his biggest fan. He's got 4 goals and 4 assists in 24 games. 30% of his shots have been on target, which is one of the lowest in the team. He's the 3rd highest for crosses behind Rice and Saka, who count corners as crosses, and has the 3rd lowest pass completion in the squad. So it's a very mixed bag of statistics. When you think about Trossard, how comfortable are you with him being that player there?
The thing is, right, I've said it before in previous episodes, but I see Trossard as an impact player. The amount of times I've seen him come on, perform from the bench, and you've clearly seen it, boys, in his celebration where he doesn't celebrate. He doesn't do his signature celebration. It's like he's trying to say to Arteta, look, this is what happens when you play me. Arteta goes and gives him that chance, but then we see a different side to Trossard whatsoever. So again, I just think he's better off as a bench, just as an impact player from the bench.
Yeah, super sub. That God, I haven't heard that in a while. That shows our age. Super sub. Matt, are you sold by him?
Yes and no. I think people... I don't want to say he became maybe a bit overrated type of thing, but I feel like with social media and with Arsenal fans or with football fans in general, there's never really a bit of nuance or balance. So I think when he was good, but it was more the goals which were the saviour. Like the goals he scored were about as clutch as you could ever remember. And when he's bad, he's pretty abysmal. But at the same time, I just think he's a really inconsistent player. And he's a player who some people have almost written off his skill set and how good he can be.
AKA Josh, yep.
No names. And I think some games you feel like you see mixed bag from him, but I think especially recently, you've seen the best version of Trossard. You've seen a player who could be a bit stronger, could be a bit quicker, but is unpredictable, is really good at beating his man on one-on-one. Our most reliable winger who's currently fit at beating their man one-on-one, probably. Like a dynamic goal threat. And I think the biggest area Arsenal lack is that outlet side of things without having Martinelli. I'm not worried about having Trossard playing. I'm more worried, as I said earlier, that it's kind of like we haven't got the best attack of all time. So watching any 3 players basically every single week might be a bit of an eyesore, with the greatest of respect. And more worried in the profile sense and relying on these same players who are good players, arguably very good players, arguably good first team players, but it's a lot to rely on. And I think Trossard deserves a lot of credit for how he stepped up in the last few weeks, month or so since Saka got injured. I know Josh is really biting his tongue like,
I'm doing everything in my power to listen very carefully, take in what you're saying, and to be fair, you make some very, very good points. I think the thing that comes across for me there is the inconsistency, and I think that's what drives me up the wall about him more than anything else. Really, is the fact that he is so inconsistent. I mean, when you look at the other options there, Rodney, Sterling is probably the next obvious choice for that position. And like you say, Trossard's a super sub. We know this. Sterling, he hasn't scored in the Prem yet. He's only played 9 games so far, but he has a remarkably good progressive carry rate for the amount of time he's been playing. So Saka has our best rate. He does, makes a progressive carry once every 17 minutes. Sterling's obviously played considerably less, but is currently at 1 every 15. Like, he wants to get the ball forward. He just seems to have lost that finesse at the end of it. Would you be fair to say?
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. I feel that in the few games that Sterling's played, when he has had the ball, he tries to take on his man. He does look dangerous. He can get past, but it's the decision making with the last action which I think let Sterling down. Whether it's the final shot on top of the goal, it's not clever enough, there's not enough finesse on it, or sometimes it's with that carry, he'll hold on to it for too long and then end up losing the ball instead of releasing the ball and getting that cross over. So I think with Sterling, sometimes he can be quite a frustrating winger to watch because you can see there's potential and talent there, but usually the conversion doesn't happen, and we need that. And you get to see the same old Arsenal story of a wonderful chance in the build-up, and then it amounts to nothing. And I think with Sterling, that's happening more often than not. But I do feel that,
Go.
No, but I do feel that, similar to Jamie's point as well, I think I might want to see him play and then have Trossard come on later. I think starting, maybe, I might see something a bit more from Sterling, and then we can maybe rotate and bring Trossard on. But something in there. There's a player in there.
You know who that made me think of when you were talking about going forward, making positive runs and not having anything at the end of it. It made me think a little bit of Gabriel Martinelli. Just a little bit. I love him. But it is a little bit true.
It's why I said even at the start, I said performances have not always been there this season. But
they've not. The last player who is being mentioned at the moment is a player who, Jamie, you have sung the praises of for a long time. I mean, your second team's Celtic anyway.
Yeah.
So, actually, is it Palace or Celtic? Your second
Celtic.
team?
Everyone. Palace. Like, my girlfriend's like, "Oh, we are Palace fan though," and I'm like, "But my second team Celtic. Like, I've got to follow my Scottish roots."
Well, in that case, let's follow them. Kieran Tierney. He's only played 18 minutes in the league this season. He is going at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But he looks quite lively. He's brought on a couple of cups. The 18 minutes he's played in the league. Do you reckon he's a viable option there?
I mean, before he joined Arsenal, I've seen him play as a left wing back, and he's got forward on good occasions, cutting. I mean, I think back to West Brom, was it? West Brom in the snow. We saw that side of Tierney where he just braved the cold, cutting. And I mean, look, the thing is, right, with Sterling, there's a few Arsenal fans that have said to me, look, I think we need a bit of consistency, but we need a run of games. I think for Arsenal fans to really judge him, people are saying to me that he needs to be given a run of games. And I'm like, I kind of get where you're coming from with that. But at the same time, it's like the run of games, unfortunately, games are now starting to come in thick and thin. And there's going to be a point where games are going to be against us. The amount of games are really going to be against us. And let's be honest, we're not going to be looking to, even if Sterling was to go on some magical run, I really highly doubt we will extend his contract beyond. Exactly. There you go. But Tierney, I mean, I wouldn't. The thing is with Tierney, I love him. I think he's a great player, but I would probably experiment with him in like the lesser games. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to, go to like United away or Liverpool away and stick Tierney in that kind of position, especially as he's been so limited to game time at Arsenal. So, if you could build his confidence up in a game against Palace or one of the promoted teams, then, it might be a bit of a different story, but yeah, I don't think the reaction's gone down too well with you guys.
Jamie,
I think there's a bit of a flaw in what he's saying.
Your girlfriend's a Palace fan, right?
Yeah.
And you said you don't want him to play against the you want him to play against the smaller teams.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I thought
the Leicester teams. The Leicester teams. I did not say anything about Palace being a small team. The Leicester team there.
I think there's a bigger flaw though. He just said play against the smaller teams like Palace, and just said than playing against the bigger teams like United at Old Trafford.
You guys are really trying to put me in the doghouse, aren't you?
That's so funny.
Shots fired from multiple angles at Jamie Patterson here.
Oh, dear.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we haven't come up with the answer, but I don't think anybody will necessarily. And while Jamie licks his wounds and apologizes to his girlfriend, we have a quick message from our partners at Zencastr. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? Well, it might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform that we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, your nose, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Are you ready to tell your story? Well, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. That was our little message from our partners at Zencastr. Welcome back to part 2 of the Daily Arsenal podcast. Now, this is the first that I'm going to be putting this warning out for the Daily Arsenal podcast. Some of the language used in this section will not be PG necessarily. There is going to be some strong language in this section. We're going to be talking now about the reaction to Miles Lewis Skelly's celebration when scoring against Manchester City. Now, Matt, we haven't spoken since the City game. Obviously, a lot has blown up about this celebration. What did you make when you were watching it in the first instance? What did you make of it? Just him sitting down, doing the meditating celebration, Miles Lewis Skelly, after he scored his goal.
Funny and brilliant because I'm not a moody I just
yeah.
Like it's almost like, obviously, things we'll allude to, I'm sure, or talk about and discuss, but it's clearly a deep-rooted, like it's not just because it's any old player celebrating against Man City. Like, some of the narratives after that game or after that celebration were just insanity. You look at the fact that Arsenal would just beat Pep Guardiola's Man City 5-1, probably one of the biggest defeats in his whole career. Obviously things have gone sour for them this season. Let's not get it twisted. They've never conceded 5 goals. They've never conceded 5 open play goals. And that happened. One 18-year-old, one 17-year-old scoring. You couldn't ask for a better way of it happening from an Arsenal perspective. But the reaction is just... It sadly just talks about the consistent problems which there's been in the past with certain players, and you obviously don't like going down that route, but ultimately you got to say things how they are. And there's just a very clear, even if it's subconscious, there's a very clear media perception of players like Lewis Skelly, his age, his skin colour, the way, the media portray players like that. We've seen so many players over the years get abused, get ridiculed, get all sorts of lame narratives made about them for one reason, which is sadly, becomes more and more evident when you see the more and more players. You only need to look at the way Jude Bellingham, for example, even if you talk about players outside of this country being treated in the media. And for one, it's a thing of, why would you want to play in this country? Not that it's great anywhere else type of thing, but that's one thing. And it's another thing that it's just a consistent thing where maybe it's not deliberate, but it's very subconsciously the case.
I mean, there's definitely a parallel that can be made in this instance, because when, let's say, for example, Rodney, in the previous fixture, Haaland was giving it the big one. He was throwing the ball at the back of Gabriel's head. He was screaming at players. He told Arteta to stay humble. He said to an 18-year-old boy who's making his Premier League debut for Arsenal, "Who the F are you?" Then Mars Lewis Skelly does his celebration when Arsenal hammer Manchester City. Carragher says it's mimicking, taking the mick. He's getting a bit carried away. Gary Neville calls it disrespectful. Jason Cundy on TalkSport, wind your neck in. He'll be lucky if he doesn't get his leg broken like Haaland's dad did.
Unbelievable.
Like, the difference in coverage of Haaland doing it at the start of the season and an 18-year-old lad doing it now is absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Where was this outrage when it was Haaland throwing the ball at the back of Gabriel said? I believe Gary Neville said it was funny.
Yes.
Back then when it happened, he said it was funny. Oh, but it's not funny now, is it? It's
No.
ridiculous. Mars Lewis Skelly's response was relatively tame compared to what he could have done. He's not coming in there with a 2-footed tackle. He's not coming in there and screaming in Haaland's face or throwing a ball back or doing whatever. It's a celebration. You've come down to the Emirates, right? After giving it all of that grief when we came up to the Etihad. Right? You've told us to stay humble, told us to stay in our lane, told us to know our place, given all this grief to our players, and then you've come to the Emirates and you failed to perform. Naturally, when that happens and you're talking a good game beforehand and you come to another team's ground and you fail to perform and your team gets humiliated, you're going to get clowned. You're going to get laughed at. That is part of the game. That's part of the fun. It's part of the sport. I don't understand how there could potentially be any of this backlash. It's ridiculous. For me, I saw and I thought this is friendly banter. From everything from the Emirates to us playing humble at full-time whistle, playing the song, the celebration. It's funny. It's funny. Come on, you got to laugh. And then you move on. Move on to the next game and start thinking about it. It's ridiculous how much just furore and kerfuffle there is about this. It's ridiculous.
You make such a good point. The club played humble. Yeah. It wasn't Lewis Skelly who got it on. Lewis Skelly didn't get a jam and go, "Oh, I've got a good idea. I'll play humble now." The club did that.
Yeah.
But everybody, all of the pundits, aim all of their sort of criticism at a young lad. Now, Jamie, this is quite a long extract I have here, but I want to get your thoughts on this. This is Ian Wright talking about Mars Lewis Skelly. We need to protect Mars Lewis Skelly at all costs. British media have found the new target and are already taking aim. Instead of hailing up this 18-year-old's impressive breakout season so far, his celebration in response to Haaland has become a point of contention. Jason Cundy insinuated Mars could have his leg broken like Haaland's father. What is branded as shithousery for some is seen as arrogance for another. The talk around Miles's name is entering dangerous territory. The sight of a young, confident, charismatic black man thriving on the biggest stage does not fit the mould of what they envision. Many people in England have an issue with confident black men in all spaces. The second you become bigger than you initially were, you become threatening and must be minimised. Do you think there's a good argument to be being made by Ian there, that the fact of his background, sort of like what Matt was alluding to earlier, has quite a big part to play in the way that the media is treating him currently?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we've had this conversation before. We've seen it before with, England in the Euros, and, we've had it with Saka, we've had it with Rashford, we've had it with Sancho, it's so sad to see. And the thing is, the poor boy's 17. He's 17 years old. Why are we targeting, or why are the media seeming to target a 17-year-old who's only just found his feet in the Premier League, who's just enjoying his football? Why can't we just, as a media, why can't they just let a 17-year-old just play football and let him enjoy playing football without facing all this scrutiny? I mean, again, going back to celebrations, you look at the Brighton Everton game where Iliman Ndiaye did the eagle celebrate, done the seagull celebration. Hold on a minute. Well, why didn't the media throw the spotlight on that celebration? But yeah,
Jamie Vardy pointing at the trophy when he scored against Tottenham.
There's so many, and the thing is now, it's like, but then all of a sudden now, the Premier League have now suddenly decided that they want to start cracking down on celebrations. Well, then why ruin a game of football by taking out celebrations like what Mars Lewis Skelly did, what Iliman Ndiaye did? You're killing the sport. You'd be killing the game as it is. The whole point of, you want friendly banter. Going back to what you guys had said about, when Haaland was like, to Mars Lewis Skelly, like, who the F are you? Miles could, at his age, he could have just turned around and been like, sorry, what did you say? Like, he could have really, like, that could have boiled his blood. But, the guy was like, you know what, cool. You know what, I'm going to show you who I am. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just, the thing is, first there's, like, obviously Mars Lewis Skelly. I would then also kind of worry a little bit about Ethan Nwaneri, because again, if the media are going to start portraying Arsenal players, it's worrying, and it is so sad to see as well, because again, you don't hear about any other club in the Prem, and it's all of it. And do you know what? It seems like we love to trigger pundits. We just love to trigger pundits, don't we? Because all of a sudden, the celebration police are back again.
Yeah.
Do you remember when? Do you remember?
It's always us, isn't it?
Arsenal, Liverpool, and Odegaard took a photo.
Oh, yeah.
Club photographer.
Official club photographer, Martin Odegaard.
Yeah. It just felt like the celebration police were back in again. Another season. They thought, wicked. You know, we had Odegaard last season. You know what? We're going to put Miles Lewis Skelly in. Why not? Who's next season?
Do you know what all the players need? They all need the Mario Balotelli, why is it always me?
Why is it always
under their shirts? They all need that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Matt, Jamie makes an interesting point, because let's be honest, in the past, especially in sort of like the post-Invincibles era, sort of like post-Invincibles up to the end of Wenger, Arsenal were kind of seen as pushovers a little bit, weren't they? They were sort of like the ticky-tacky, beautiful footballers. I mean, I remember some of the hideous injuries. Ramsey getting his leg broken, the Eduardo injury, the Abu Dhabi injury. And if I remember rightly, fans from other teams were kind of laughing at Arsenal players in those moments. Do you think there's just like there's an element where we try and turn a joke around? Like Arsenal, like Rodney said before, Arsenal did something funny to call something back in the game. It was banter, it was calling back. But there does seem to be a hatred when Arsenal try and reply to these sort of things.
I think there's multiple different points within this. I think the first point, I saw a thread on Twitter the other day, which is really interesting, is really true, is Arsenal the culture club. Whether it's a subconscious thing or not from the media or anything like that, they don't like the fact that Arsenal have the most diverse fans in London or wherever else. Arsenal are, I think they fielded the first black side or something along those lines. Arsenal have, collaborated with so many different streetwear brands and everything like that, and been innovative with the way that they involve other fans in other countries. And the media, simply put, don't like that.
The white kit. People hate it. Arsenal fans.
They hate it. Can't stand it.
They despise it.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And that's a great example. Obviously, some of our fans don't help ourselves with some of the very insensitive jokes. But generally speaking, that is, that's an example of a campaign which Arsenal have done to make a difference. They're trying to make a positive difference. Another thing is we kind of got to accept that no matter what happens, the goalposts will be moved. So when Arsenal were a pushover, it was Arsenal weak, any away game, they're getting bullied, etc., etc., etc. Now it's, Arsenal winning these big six games, but they're playing too defensive. It's, why are they, why are they celebrating like this for when they've not lost to a big six side in like the best part of 2 years in the Premier League or something along those lines. Ultimately, the narrative keeps getting shifted. Ultimately, the goalposts keep getting shifted. And ultimately, some of the reaction is, I get, like the general side of, but some fans don't help. But I think that excuse is redundant when you think about how annoying a lot of fan base are. I can't personally stand our fans on socials at the best of times. But
we're not always the best, are we?
I know. Make life a bit harder for ourselves sometimes.
Exactly that. So I get that. But I just think things get blown out of proportion all the time. And genuinely, I just think, quickly touching back on the Lewis Skelly side of things, for one, this country is just deeply, deeply miserable. And, you look at like PSG when they did that celebration in lockdown against Dortmund. Everyone loved it. Haaland also didn't have a problem with what we did on Sunday either.
He said he didn't care. He did an interview.
Yeah.
If he's not caring, then how is the topic of conversation after a 5-1 thumping about this? Like, it's sad. And I think the notion or the general narrative around Lewis Skelly, just to start with, it stemmed instantly from that Wolves game, some of the hideous things being even written days after.
Yeah.
And it went from, an injustice of a decision to, it's been overturned. This guy is so blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean? And then that boiled over to, obviously, once again, them seeing a young, confident black man who they don't like seeing doing well and celebrating in apparently a pretty repulsive way, even though Jamie Vardy's been paraded for years. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be sort of a pattern with Lewis Skelly of people saying that effectively it's boiling down to he stepped out of line. You know, he shouldn't be doing that. He's young. He's not experienced enough. Look at where he's come from. He shouldn't be doing that. He's stepping out of line. That seems to be the discourse at the moment. And Rodney, at the moment, this should be the best week of Mars Lewis Skelly's life.
Yeah.
He is he's 18 years old. He scored a great goal in a Man City thumping. And like Matt says, this is the discourse.
Yeah.
How bloody annoyed would you be? How pissed off are you if you're Mars Lewis Skelly at the moment?
Oh my God, Mold is like just apoplectic. You know, it should be ridiculous. I mean, even if you think about it, wind it back to the Wolves game as well. If that red card hadn't been overturned, you wouldn't even be able to be playing for that moment as well. So you can argue that it's like he's gone through such an injustice, almost missed that golden opportunity, is, by the grace of God, given the opportunity to go and play, shines, and has a spectacular masterpiece, incredible masterclass of a game. And even then, all he's getting, hate, abuse, criticism. It's ridiculous. The kid had a wonderful performance. I don't understand why no one can just enjoy that. But to call it back to some of the points about, well, should he be staying in his lane? You know, this kind of discourse about the place you've come from, you know, you need to. I see it. Even on Jamie Carragher's point, his argument, right, was that Haaland has gone over there, has just won so many trophies, scored so many goals that he didn't think Miles Lewis Skelly had the right to even dare to do his celebration. Like he's got some sort of pattern on it. It's ridiculous. And I realize that with some of these serial winners, you know, the serial winners, they're not really kind of living up to this mentality monster hype. It very much seems that what you like to do is you like to kind of have your trophies, you like to have your victories here, and then no one else has the right to criticize you whatsoever. Only the people who want a similar level to you success-wise can criticize you, and it seems that you guys are fragile. You don't want to have a humiliating performance against a lesser team and then have your performance criticized. You want it to be about past history, about past trophies. That Arsenal and its players as a whole need to stay in their lane because they haven't won anything since 2020. They're not a big enough club. They shouldn't be seen as a threat. And how dare they step out their lane and beat a bigger team 5-1? How dare they go out there and show that they've got youngsters with talent? It's ridiculous. It just seems that there's a kind of bias against the club as a whole and its players. And you really have to call it out for what it is. It's utterly, it's infuriating to go and watch. Just enjoy the game and accept the fact that your team was defeated. Enjoy the fact that as players, if you have a bad game, you have a right to be criticized, whether it's by the media, whether it's by the opposite team as well. And that is fine. You move on and go on to the next game. Let's not have us sitting there and thinking that Sol Campbell was right and going, is it a colour thing? You know, I don't want to be thinking about that. No. Most controversy. I don't want to be thinking about it.
Like, that's a really good point. Their job is to go out and play football. They will be criticised. Fairly and unfairly, but it needs to be about the football, not about anything else, not about any of the other nonsense. And to be honest, this is a Daily Arsenal podcast. We normally have a really good laugh. We talk about things which are ridiculous and stupid. This is not the sort of thing we want to be talking about either. It has taken over the discourse of this because it has to be addressed the way it's been talking about. And do you know what? Sod it. We're behind Mars Lewis Skelly. All Arsenal fans
yes,
are.
sir.
It is the fact that we're having this discussion is ridiculous, and it just goes to show the state of the way things are going in this country in the media. But we are not a part of that. We will back that lad to the hilt, whatever happens. And
keep doing what you're doing, MLS. Keep doing what you're doing.
We love to see it.
Bloody right, boys. And do you know what? On that, I think we're going to end it tonight because otherwise we could go on for hours about this and get angrier and angrier. But what we need to remember is we have an 18-year-old in that team who is a future England star, and he is an Arsenal boy through and through.
Can we just repeat that sentence to the media? A future England star.
Future England star.
Run it back.
He is a future England star.
Yeah,
and he will be our first choice left back because, let's be honest, we need one in England. So that is it. Thank you all so much for listening. Obviously, a little bit of a heavier subject this week, but it needs to be talked about. So thank you very much for listening. I've been your host, Josh Vince. They were Jamie Patterson, Rodney Gooden, and Matt. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with a crossover with the Leicester lot. And until then, have a great day. Stay safe and goodbye.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.